Please can you remind me, if you'll be so kind, staring out into space, asking God to hear my case, trying to think of all things past. How long will my memory last? The purple angel, purple angel, purple angel, you're next to me.
Well, welcome everyone to Alzheimer Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori LeBay, and I'm also the founder of Alzheimer Speaks. We have not only the radio show, but we have a resource website, a YouTube channel, a blog, and we also do dementia chats, which are video interviews where I interview the true experts, and those are the people living with the disease. Alzheimer Speaks was really created out of a need from our family when my mom was diagnosed with dementia, and we just felt like we didn't have the resources that we felt should be there. And so Alzheimer Speaks was created to raise everyone's voice and hopefully connect them to services all around the world that they can tap into. And we really see ourselves as an advocacy-based company providing multiple platforms to help shift our dementia care from crisis to comfort around the world. We believe that by sharing knowledge and just having these everyday conversations about life with dementia, we can change the world, one person at a time, one family at a time. And we know that that is working because all of your likes and your clicks and your shares with your spheres of influence, your Facebook friends, your LinkedIn colleagues, your Pinterest peeps, your Twitter tribe, every time you push some of our content out, you are raising awareness. And for that, we really thank you. And that has gotten us acknowledged by Oprah as a health hero for 2018. Maria Shriver recognized us as an architect of change, and Dr. Oz and ShareCare recognized Alzheimer Speaks as the #1 influencer online for Alzheimer's. And we did not do that alone, so pat yourself on the back for being part of our tribe and spreading the word and working together and being collaborative, because we really think collaboration is the only way we're going to win this battle anyways. We also want to open the door to any of you that are listening, because maybe you might be interested in being our next guest. Maybe you're living with the disease, or you're thinking you could have the diagnosis but are too scared to go in yet. Maybe you're a family member caring for a loved one, or a business professional that has a service, a product, or a tool. Maybe you're a researcher, an author, a singer, a songwriter, a film director, an advocate. Everybody is welcomed on Alzheimer Speaks. So just reach out to me at alzheimerspeaks.com. There's a big contact me button, and just shoot me an email and we'll have a conversation. Now, before I introduce our guest today, I always like to give a shout out to some of our friends. And first, I want to mention, in case you're not aware of the Alzheimer's Research and Prevention Foundation, you'll want to check them out. They do great work, and they really take a holistic approach to the disease. They really focus on nutrition and exercise and meditation and things that you can implement in your everyday life, which is really nice. The American Senior Magazine, which has a wonderful magazine that comes out with large print and great articles, and there's some games and things in there, but it's just a really fantastic magazine that you might be interested in getting, and you can get a discount if you go to alzheimerspeaks.com. I want to give a shout out to Maria Shriver for her women's Alzheimer's movement known as the WAM. She also does Move for the Minds, which is going to be coming around again in June, and the dates haven't been announced in the locations, but I will let everyone know as soon as I know. Also, the Purple Table Reservations Program, which is really cool. If you have not seen that, check that out. It's just kind of in its infant stages, but they are really motivated to get restaurants educated to help people with dementia. in a very discreet fashion so that they're comfortable and still being out in our communities. And then our memory cafes, people are always asking me, where do I find one? Just go to memorycafe.com and you will find a beautiful list put together by calendar cards there. And the last thing I want to mention is the Neuro Film Festival. The deadline is coming up March 2nd to submit your video, and we have a link for that on our blog as well as our website. So feel free to take part in that. Now, today's guest I am excited to have with us is Barbara Kirby, and she brings 25 years of experience in elder care and the study of aging to us today. She was a caregiver for her mom and dad through a 15-year journey. And she was really shocked to see how poorly a lot of seniors were treated. And for her, like many of us, that was made a big impression and was life-changing. And so she left her investment career and started a private business called Later Life Planner. And she's a navigator and advocate for people kind of going through those later life phases. And so we are just thrilled to have her with us. And she's going to talk a little bit about her book as well that can help families raise awareness in terms of how do you live in those end life years better. How do you plan for it? So welcome, Barbara. How are you today?
Hi, Lori. Very good, thanks. It's great to be here.
Well, I'm excited to have you. Now you are in, is it British Columbia? Is that where you're at?
Yes, on the West Coast.
Okay, wonderful. Mm-hmm. I've heard it's beautiful there. I have not been there yet, but
it is. Get up here. It's our little Shangri-La.
Well, one of the questions I always ask everybody, and that's a guest on our show, is have you ever been touched by dementia with your own personal family or friends?
Yes, I have. And absolutely shocked when it happened. I was completely unaware and unprepared. Yeah, it was life-changing, of course.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Can you tell us, in your intro, I said you were kind of shocked to find out how poorly, sometimes how seniors are treated later in life. Can you tell us a little bit more of what got to you to become a planner and a navigator?
Yeah. Well, of course, there were many incidences that happened in my own family between my mom and dad. And it was my mom that was that had Alzheimer's. I was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And but Dad was the first one to go into residential care. He had a brain injury. And so it was just, one of the very first things, I'm going to tell you this experience I had. One of the very first things I saw when Dad went into a residential care home, I came to have dinner with him his second night he was settled in there. I walked into the dining room, and the residents were fighting, and they were throwing cutlery, and there were tables being turned up. It was like a massive barroom brawl. It was really odd, and it was frightening, and all the staff were standing around watching and not responding, and a little bit, some of them were kind of laughing. And now, mind you, this was 15, 20 years ago, okay? So I've had a long journey here. But, there's still many, many things going on. So I walked in along the side of the wall and got my dad and pulled him out, and I changed care homes for him the next day. This was his first experience in a residential care. And the next one we went into, he was there for 15 years, and I was on the family council, and it was a very good home. But there was one person there who had a position of power, and she was actually a union shop steward. Nothing to say about unions. It's not about that, but it's about a person being in a position of power that was able to abuse people, psychologically bully people, and she was able to get away with it. I won't go into the details, but eventually I did talk to the care home, and we were able to make an arrangement where she didn't go into Dad's room to protect her and then to protect Dad. But there were so many things that I saw in residential care where people were just being neglected. They were being shoved into, the TV room and all plunked in front of a television watching shows that were not appropriate for people who were at that stage of life. And, just so much disregard. There's a lot that goes on. Yeah.
Wow, that had to really shock you, that first home. I mean, I would have just been in tears. I would have been livid, and I would have been in tears going, I can't believe this is even happening.
Yeah, I know. It was well, I was shocked, and I still didn't believe it was real, I think. But I moved Dad out immediately. The next day they were able to get him into a home, as I say, that was actually very good. And it's interesting because some residential care facilities have an open door policy, and they're open to change and to listen to what the problems are. And then there's others that have a closed door policy, and you go to approach them and they're immediately on the defensive. And I experienced that with my mom when she went into residential care, and it was just like night and day, these two different facilities or residential care homes. So that was a learning experience, and we had several situations happen there for my mom. I ended up reporting them twice to licensing, and eventually the case manager for the health authority said, "Oh, you want to move your mom?" Yes, I've been trying for 2 years. And they moved her to a new home. And it was better. It was better. But through that 15 years, I certainly learned a lot about how to advocate. And you can't be on your high horse and threatening and blaming other people. You've got to get rid of that blame game, and it's got to be focused more on understanding that the people that are doing their jobs are stressed, they're overworked, underpaid, in some cases, not recognized as well, and then of course there's cutbacks, and it's really hard from their side too. So I find that if you really approach it as approach the staff from a business perspective, when you're dealing with the director of care, and when you really want to solve the problems, of course, when you're dealing with the care aides and whatnot, it's nice to form a relationship with them where you can trust and share some of your concerns on a personal level.
Yeah, it is a tough thing to maneuver, and it's tough to know, because when you go on tour, you just assume that everything is in its best because you're on tour, and they're kind of standing on guard, and they've been notified that somebody's coming through, and is that the real deal?
Yeah, exactly. And I'll say, give it the smell test. Look at the expressions on the residents' faces. Look at how they're dressed. These are more things that the staff have a little more difficulty hiding. And I think and if you can ask the odd person, but you know what, people are often afraid to speak out for fear of retribution. And so, so it's tough. And so, now we're really talking about aging in place and changing that from residential care to staying in your own home. And that comes with its a whole load of its own issues too, of course. Yeah. But and that's where my planning comes into play. Where I talk about planning, and I'm looking at people from the age of 70 to 100 plus nowadays, right? But and 70 to 100 plus feeling healthy, and not necessarily needing the healthcare system. But I like to walk people through what are the things to look out for, and how do you maneuver when when things have come up, like that your mom has been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, or, for some reason dad has to go into a care home, and what do you do then? What are the barriers? Or if mom or dad are at home, what are the services that are available? And unless people are doing the research, or they're talking to maybe a case manager too with the health authority, you don't know. You just don't know what the services are out there. And there's not a lot of people like me out there. So I'm sort of like the travel agent for people for care and housing and later life planning. I think in the U.S. you have more people that are doing this. Mm-hmm. But there's not so many here in Canada. So, but I built the business truly based on what my own experiences were, the barriers and the gaps that I saw, and when I really could have used help, and there was nobody there. And and then, of course, everything else that I've learned along the way, like just choosing who's going to be your legal representatives. Many times people will choose them just based on, well, it's my oldest son or my oldest daughter. Well, that's a big mistake for many, many people, unfortunately, because they may not have the same values as you. And so really I base my planning tool on it's a values-based method of working through planning your later life, and really getting to know who you are and what your needs are, what your values are.
Yeah, that's very important. I know when we did it with my folks, my dad, like yours, had a brain injury. He actually had brain cancer. And then my mom had dementia. And they didn't really, think that they needed all that. They said, well, we don't have that much. And I said, you both have a life, and that needs protecting. So we need to talk about this stuff. And so my husband and I ended up going hand in hand with them and went through the same process. So to take a little of the scary out. And I'm a firm believer. I mean, we should all be doing this as soon as we become legal age. We should have powers of attorney and healthcare directives. And we're so afraid of those conversations. And that really needs to change. That we need to get educated about diverse situations that could hit us or our family or our friends, so that we are prepared. And I think in the U.S. here, it's gotten a little better, where people are more open to maybe taking a tour of a place, or going in for some education, where, oh gosh, years ago, I mean, they thought you were going to tie them up until they signed the paper to come on in. I mean, it was... really literally 30 years ago, that's kind of the mentality. But I think there's more educational programs available to people in different formats. So, they can listen to a show like this, or, they can find information online. But again, you still need to know what's available in your neck of the woods, when it comes to physical help, if it's getting home health care, if it's a support group, if it's moving into some type of community. And people need to realize that it is okay, and someone's not going to hound you if you meet with them, and just lay that groundwork, that I'm just educating myself right now. And go from there.
Very important. And so in some of my workshops and training, I'll do this. I've got a little chart that because the whole thing is to empower people to make their own decisions. And the more they know that these are the things that they have to look out for, or that are trigger points where they can make their decisions, it enables them, it empowers them. And so, for example, a checklist of am I still okay to do my grocery shopping? Do I still like cooking? Do I still want to clean? And it doesn't mean that you're falling apart because you want. I mean, I like to have a housekeeper, but I think if they're more aware of those particular items, those particular trigger points, like cooking and cleaning and shopping, paying bills, keeping appointments, it gives them the opportunity to say, hey, do I want to bring somebody in to help me do this?
Mm-hmm.
Or do I want to, maybe I'll go into independent living because I just hate cooking and cleaning, and, they can take
Mm-hmm.
care of that and I can do my other stuff. Or
Yep.
then you can, trigger a conversation with your daughter or son and say, hey, I'm thinking about this. What do you think we should do? And I think it's really important if you have family, if you can share how you're feeling as well and your thoughts with them, then, it becomes a more collaborative effort and takes the pressure off of the kids because they don't know you've even been thinking about it, perhaps.
Yep.
It opens up the door. So, yeah.
Well, and it's can be kind of a scary time. I know when I used to sell real estate for 25 years, and so I would kind of help people through that process. And what I would find was that a lot of people were thinking about it, but they didn't mention it to anyone, not their kids,
Right.
not their friends. And I didn't realize how deeply ingrained that privacy was.
Yeah.
With people until I did I did some kind of presentation at a townhome for a new builder in town. And, we were just going to do this presentation and then half-hour conversation, Q&A, and then leave. And like 3 hours later, everybody was still there and they wouldn't leave.
Yeah.
And what we found was that everybody in the room had been contemplating it, but nobody had talked about it to others. And they were shocked how many other people, and some of them were their friends, sitting in their room listening to the same presentation, thinking about the same things, but they never discussed it. And they were, it was almost like a support group for them.
I love it.
Literally, because they felt so much more comfortable, because they used to think, well, how did somebody just up and move and make that decision? And it's like, they're like you, they've been contemplating this for years.
Yeah, and you think about moving to downtown.
Yeah.
That's scary.
There's so many issues, and people, they don't want to give up their independence, but bottom line is people only move to create more independence, to maintain what they have. It's not about giving it up. It's really about gaining.
Yeah.
But society has twisted some of that on us in terms of how we look at things. And just because we can't do something anymore or we don't want to doesn't mean we're less than.
Exactly.
It just means we're different now.
Exactly. Well, for examples, I heard this video the other day, and they were talking about when my children were babies, I was a certain type of person.
Mm-hmm.
When my children are teenagers, I'm a different person.
Mm-hmm.
And I can manage my children differently. And we can look at it the same way as midlife and later life. We manage our lives differently. We have to look at things differently. And so, for example, I see this major sort of paradigm shift going on. We can use this as an example where, for years people have been planning their retirement planning, and it's all been financial. And, it's all about financial planning and your legal documents and this sort of stuff. Most people try to focus on that before it's too late. Well, now after you finish putting into your RRSPs or your whatever you call them down in the US, your retirement plans.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, once you reach a certain age, you're not contributing to those anymore so much. So now you have to think about your health care and about your well-being, and that's where your focus should be, is on your well-being, because your money is your money. You don't you don't let it go. You've got a good broker or bankers, possibly, whatever you're doing. Also, you need to think about the cost of care and the cost of housing and those sort of things. And I can help people with that, work through that as well. But really, the most important is your well-being from that stage of life on. And it is important, because if you don't take care of that, and if you don't understand who you are and what your values are, then nobody else is going to. And you need to create your own voice and have people who are going to be a voice for you. And it doesn't have to be family members. It can be friends. It can be church. It can be your professionals that you've worked with for years. It's surprising where you can draw those supports from. But I think that people really need to shift the way they think, and drop the egos. That's a really big issue, I think, for people. Is feeling that, well, I'm independent, I can do this myself. But I use a term called radical collaboration, where at some point you need to say, hey, okay, I need people to work with me on this.
Yeah.
And it's not that you're giving up, and it's not that you can't do it yourself. But it's easier with help. It's easier with help. So so that's sort of where, and I've written a little bit about that in my book, and let's see, what else have we got here? Yeah. Anyway.
Well, and I think it's important to understand we're better when we work together. We're stronger. And I think a lot of times people think that if they can't do something, again, they're less than. No, they're just different, and they can you're still in relationship. I think a lot of times we forget about our relationships. I think that's evident in our world today. We don't appreciate other people to the extent that we used to. And, when you were talking about how people would take care of, their financial planning, those are all tasks, and they're not anything that you have to really get too emotional about. But then when you talk about well-being and who are you and what brings you joy and how would you like to live your life? Okay, now you got to really think.
And that's so difficult for many people.
Yeah, and some people view it as, well, that's being selfish. If I want that, and it's like, it's just living smart. It's living well, and all of us deserve that at all different ages. But I think getting to the crux of what makes you happy, what brings you joy, no matter if you're living independently or if you're living in community or if you're getting services in, those are important things to know.
Yeah.
Those are really important things to know. And for others to know about you.
It's equally as important as exercise, when you're thinking about the mind and the emotions and your feelings and going within, you also, we think about our exercise, and everybody says, well, if you want to live a long life, you have to exercise and eat healthy. You do, but it can't exclude this other side as well, because when you are less mobile and depending on other people, you need to draw from your strength within, and you need to know what that is, and have given it some thought already. And humor is very, very important. We need to be able to see the absurd, the crazy, the funny, all that sort of stuff. And the other thing too, even when you are in care, you can support others that are with you. You can, you can support your peers, and I one of the articles I wrote though is called "Alone in a Crowd," and it's where people may not be able to communicate. And there they are all together, like maybe because they don't hear well, or maybe because they speak a different language, or they're experiencing dementia, and it's much more difficult for people to communicate. So what do you do, and what I've found is that, you could be sitting beside another woman beside you, and, just touch her on the arm and say, hey, see that nice little kitten over there, that cat, isn't that pretty? Like there's ways to communicate without being verbal, and understanding somebody else's feelings, where they're at, and I think touch is really important, and acknowledgement.
Yeah, I think you hit on a good piece there, because most of our communication is nonverbal, if we know it or not. We're so used to yapping, but we're reading all the other signals. We're looking into somebody's arms crossed, are their lips up or down? Do they have a glint in their eye, or, are their eyes, kind of squished and they're mad? You can read so much. And I think one of the things that is nice, I think more people are aware of that as they age, because they're just more in tune, and learn things over the years. And I think as we age, I know my hearing and my sight aren't what they used to be.
Yeah.
And so, I need the bright lights, and I hear my mom, saying, how can you do your homework in the dark, and now I get that, where it wasn't dark,
Yeah.
or multitasking or doing things with loud noises going on, music in the background, and it didn't faze me, and it drove her bananas, because we're different people. But having an appreciation for that, I think so much more, or not having to be as fast paced.
Yeah.
I think as we age, there's so many gifts that can be taught other generations, and that we can just relish. For me, I'm pushing 60, and I like my quiet time more than I've ever liked my quiet time.
Yeah.
I like, I revel in that. And that would be important for me to know if I'm going to make a move, or if I'm going to hire services in my house, what I want my atmosphere to be like.
Yes. Yeah.
It's, how I like the lighting, what I like to wear, what's comfortable, to me, what time of day I like to do things. And these are conversations we don't have.
No, that's right. And I think it's really important to write all of this stuff down. And I have a personal planning guide and resource book, and all of this information should be written in that book, so that your family knows all these little idiosyncrasies about you that you never talk about. And even with chronic illnesses, or if you've had a shoulder injury and it always hurts to lay one way, when you lose your voice and can't speak anymore, and people don't know that you can't raise your arm up high, or that you can't lay on it, you're going to be in pain all the time. So these things need to be written down, and they're what you think are little innocuous things. Write it all down. And one of the other things I wanted to mention too is some people are introverts. I happen to be an extrovert. I bet you are too.
I'm a split on that one.
But I'm learning about introverts, and I realize that they gain their energy from being alone. They draw their energy from being alone, and being with people or in crowded places. They can take in small bits, but even sometimes it's not necessary. But we jump to the conclusion that they're lonely. We jump to the conclusion that they need to be with everybody.
In a crowd, yeah.
And so again, having this written somewhere is very, very helpful for the staff and for family members too. And then And
I think for the person, let's say a person with dementia, to know that that's in writing, to know that that's been communicated, I would think would give them a sense of peace.
Yeah.
Knowing that they haven't left that for others to figure out, because really they're simplifying the process for others as well. As hopefully securing a better life for themselves as the disease would progress. And one of the I can't remember who it was on Dementia Chats. I think it was actually Susan Session, who has since passed, but she talked about how people always like to weed and clear things out. And she said, but what you have to remember with a person with dementia is everything you toss has a memory attached to it. And they're already losing those memories. So she, for example, wrote on the back of everything where she got it and why she loved it.
Oh, that's a beautiful thing to do.
Yep. And so,
story for everything, isn't it?
And so again, it sounds really simple, and for some people, I don't have to do that. But if your memory or your brain is declining, that's a really cool thing to do. And not only for you, but for your family. So if they're weeding things out, or if it comes time when somebody needs to move, they're going to make sure those precious things are there to help trigger, because they know they bring you peace.
Yes, absolutely. And that's another thing is that I'll put even an 8.5 by 11 story history of mom or dad on their wall in the room if they're in residential care, even if they're at home and they have care staff coming in, so that people know who this person was, that they love to horseback ride, or that they, that they did this or that. It's just, I think it's so important, and it gives depth to who that person is, and it maybe makes the care aide think a little bit more about who they are as an individual, treat them a little bit differently.
Yep. That they're still a person and
Yes.
and had a life. Now, you have kind of 5 key principles that you help people focus on when you go through kind of a support meeting with them. Can you highlight those for us?
Well, one of the things that I say is that it's really important to be curious.
Mm-hmm.
I think as long as we're here on this earth, it's important to be curious, to know what's going on. And one of the things that I think is important to do is to just keep an eye in the newspaper, even for
Mm-hmm.
example, and check out what's happening in the seniors realm. And maybe you're not even anywhere near there yet, but what are seniors talking about in the
Mm-hmm.
newspaper?
Yeah.
So it just kind of is starting to arm you with information. And then I talk about being prepared to take action. And again, it doesn't have to be immediate, but it's something that you need to know that down the road things may change, and it's important that you're prepared to fit into that and in your way, because you can create what you want. And then reframing, you have to reframe the way you think. So these are the broad pictures. This is not the actual information, but this is the broad picture that we're looking at here. And do you need as big of a house to live in? Do you need what would happen when you're not driving anymore? And it's okay, instead of driving, you can take a cab, or do there's lots of other things you can do. Self-awareness, and again, I talk about the cooking and the cleaning, and that sort of thing, and making your own decisions. And then the radical collaboration, that's the 5th one, and that's about knowing that you work together. You can do a better work as a team than as one person. So that's the big picture. And then on the smaller scale, I'm looking at who your support network is, what your chronic illnesses are, your history there, and about we talk about housing options, and your finances, and just we do just a big picture of the finances, income asset summary, so we can look at what type of housing might be appropriate for you, or if you want to stay in your own home, and what the costs are going to be. And then, do you have your wills up to date, and your rep agreements, and that sort of thing. And then I point people into the right direction, because I'm not the professional that's going to be doing their wills or their rep agreements, and so you have to have the contacts and the knowledge of the different types of housing and whatnot for people. Yeah.
Well, and I think so many people have to realize too, because I think this is a myth out there too, that everyone who gets dementia has a care partner that's going to take care of them. And there's a lot of people living alone. There's a lot of people that get a chronic illness or break a hip or whatever it might be, that don't have anybody, that haven't built kind of that clan, to support themselves. And this is even more critical, for them.
And I find that a lot of my calls are from women who have never married, or who are divorced, or don't have children, or are estranged from their children. There's so many different scenarios. And it's really quite shocking to think that we've gotten ourselves into this position, in a sense, that we're not prepared financially. Many people are not prepared financially and emotionally, and so it's good to have somebody to talk to about it, and somebody who is not biased. Is just open-minded and not pushing you in one direction or another.
Yeah, and has the resources and the knowledge base, and has been there. I mean, so a lot of times you can talk to a person who's never been through it, but they've been trained on it.
Yes.
And there's a whole different level of empathy and compassion, I think, that comes from someone who's lived it and breathed it and struggled
Yeah.
with it and felt the joys of it.
Yes.
You know, it is very different, and
Yeah.
I think it's important for people to plan and navigate what they want their life to look like at all ages, in stages of life. And
Yeah.
you know, so many look at, well, you know, it's the end of life, you know, and that's the way it goes. But you know, with my mom, I mean, they told her, you know, she'd live, you know, maybe 7 years, and she lived 30.
Yes.
You know, that's
Well,
they
and
don't.
same thing with Dad. I'll
Mhm.
just a quick little story. He was in the hospital in recovering from this brain injury for a
Mhm.
year, and they said he may live 2 years. He'll never eat again, and he'll never walk again. So you can imagine slumped over in a wheelchair with a feeding tube.
Yep.
Well, and the actuary, because there was a court case, said he may live 7 years.
Mhm.
Well, and in fact, he lived 15 years because he had me.
Uh-huh.
But you know, a loving daughter is really great, but to have a voice, an advocate, somebody to be able to speak up for you. And he walked within 6 months, and he was eating full meals within a month. You know,
Mhm.
they say he'd never have those two abilities again. You know, so
Wow.
it just goes to show you how. And he wanted to live. You know,
Mhm.
he was a fighter. So you know, he wasn't living independently, but he was very happy in his residential care, and you know, but that's why people need an advocate. They need a voice. They need somebody who can speak up for them on their terms.
Mhm.
Terms is very important, and not somebody who's going to be out there creating enemies all along the way
Yep. Yep.
and closing doors instead of opening doors.
Well, and there's so many people that really do much better living in community. And I'll just give an example. Again, this goes back to my real estate days. But I would, you know, get people who had lived in a home alone for years and years. Spouse had passed away, kids had moved away, and they thought that they were perfectly content, and they felt that they were very independent living in that house. And they did not want to go into a community setting. And yet once they got in that community setting, the family said, "This, we have our old mom back, you know, or we've never seen her like this,"
Yes.
because they turn into this social butterfly.
Yes.
Because I think neighborhoods used to be different. You know, when I grew up, everybody knew everybody. It was an open door policy on everybody's house in a 4-block radius. I mean, you could get a sandwich or go potty or get a cut fixed or get a ride from anybody, you know.
Yeah.
And, you know, if somebody was sick, there was a neighbor shoveling the snow or cutting the grass or bringing over a meal. It was really quite different than what our lives are like now.
Yeah.
And so, but when we go from that transformation to this really close-knit community and things gradually change over time, we don't even know they've changed until we get back in where there's that sense of community again. And then it's like, oh, this is what it was like, and this is what I've been missing, and I didn't even know I missed it because it slipped away so slowly.
Isolation is really insidious. You know, it just kind of sneaks up on us, and we say, no, we don't need this, no, we don't need that. But like you say, when you change, when you reframe, when you change where you are, it opens up a whole new world for you.
Yep.
You know, often, or you can choose to stay private and in your own space.
Yep.
But you know, it's good to be in that atmosphere, because even if you have to come out for your meals only, it creates some sense of engagement, and you know, is helpful.
Yeah.
And that there is.
Yeah, and you just might make a friendship with that one very unique person. It might not be everybody that you're going to, but it might just be, you know, and life is a numbers game.
Yeah.
You know, it truly is. So I think, you know, what you're doing is so important for people. And it's scary and it's stressful, but it can be fun and exciting as well. But like you said, a lot of it is kind of changing and reframing the mind frame of why you're doing this and looking at this will allow me to live a better life, because nobody wants to push ahead for an ickier life, you know.
No.
And so that doesn't change in the later stages. And I always tell people, you know, stop looking at it as end of life and just look at it as the next stage of life, because that's just really what it is. And you don't know how many other stages there'll be after this move or this change either. None of us do.
No, that's right. And you know, if you can live it in a peaceful, happy manner with respect and dignity for yourself and from others, then it really I think it really makes a difference to our whole, it's all part of our well-being. I have this one woman, older person who, she's just great. I love her to bits. And she says, I never ask anybody their age. She said, I just ask them the year they're born. And she's really good with the numbers. And she says, and they say, well, I was born in 1925. And she says, well, I beat you. I was born in 1923. 95, right?
Oh, too funny.
It's just, you know, you just got to find the little sense of humor here and there, and just the joy. You know, there is joy. You know, as much as they say, you know, it's coming to the end, or it's the you know, I don't know. There's all sorts of warehouse. It's an awful term, but you know, that's what some of them jokingly like to say. Well, we're in the warehouse now, and you know, I'm just thinking, well, you know, you could say that, or you could say you're in a health spa.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the term I like to use, is health spa.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. My mom referred to her nursing home one day. They had just a real special event where they did, they had music and they had spa and they, you know, had hors d'oeuvres and all this stuff. And she was talking to our family saying everybody needs a spa day at the VOA, which was Volunteers of America Nursing Home.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and she was talking about it like it's a 5-star hotel. Everybody has to experience this. But she, you know, it was just so precious to her.
Yeah.
And there's a lot that can be done, you know, like that, but we don't hear those things quite as much.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But again, we have to get people to focus on, you know, there's the fears, the tears, or the joy. You know, there's the tears for what we've lost, there's the fears of what's to come, or there's the joy that's right before us, and we're only gonna find what we're looking for.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very true. Yeah.
Well, Barbara, this has been a great conversation. If people want to get a hold of you, what contact information would you like them to have? And also, how do they get your book?
Okay. Well, they can go to my website, which is www.seniorsadvocate.ca. My phone number is 604-767-4994. And Gmail. What is my Gmail? You could go to barb@seniorsadvocate.ca would be my Gmail. And this is my book here that I've published, and it is called Life Planning Support and Advocacy for Seniors and Their Families, and Raising Awareness for a Better Life in Later Years. And it's just a compilation of articles and that I put together, and I think I've had a lot of really good positive response from it. So you can get this on Amazon, and I think it's $10 around there. It's not too costly. And so you can take a look at that. I'm in the process of writing another book, a little bit more interactive than this one. This is actually interesting for I found that nonprofits actually want to use this as well, like community senior centers, because there's a lot of good information in here for people, and the libraries like it, of course. Yeah, and then I've got my planning tool. I'll just show you that. It's not for sale, but when I do my consultations, it's a binder that I give you. And there's a guide to using it. And eventually I will be putting this online as a series of webinars so that people can do it themselves. Because it's, it's like, people get these little books to create your will or to your that type of thing, but they don't fill them in. It's because it's too much to think about, and people get very tired of it, and they don't understand why it's important. So in my book, I say why it's important, and why you need to know specifically who your support network is, and all that. Yeah. So this is these are the two publications that I have right now.
Wonderful. Well, I appreciate all the time that you took with us today. I think it was very interesting, and I'm a firm believer in living smart and planning ahead and having those conversations that some people think are scary. I think sometimes once you just start the conversation, the scariness goes away.
Absolutely. Yes, I agree 100%.
And there's kind of a weight lifted knowing I talked about this. And then it gets other people thinking, maybe I should talk about this. Maybe I should look deeper into this. This makes sense. Because it really is a good thing to do. And it helps out not only you, but your loved ones who care for you as well. You know.
And if there's tension in the family and a few problems that way, it's good to bring in a professional or somebody from the outside to have that conversation with you as well. And I'd be happy to do it over the phone, on Skype, possibly on Zoom. And you'll have to phone me to get connections with Skype. I'm not 100% sure how to do that, but I have a Skype address. So.
Wonderful. Well, good. Well, again, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Great. It's been wonderful thank you very much.
And in closing, I just want to thank people for listening, and please feel free to share this show and our other shows. That's what we do them for. And last, I just want to share with you a tool that I've developed called Your Memory Chip. And that tool just gets us to switch from being really task-oriented to being relationship-centered when we're dealing with people. And for me, it helped me a ton with my own relationship with my mom, because I was so caught up about checking off all the things I had to do, and that made me feel good, but it didn't do anything for our relationship. So I had to switch and really focus on something really basic before every interaction, and that was what was really important. Was she safe? Was she happy? And was she pain-free? And when I put that first and foremost, I found that I could do my tasks differently, or some of them I didn't need to do, or I could ask help for, I could release them, or I could just do them, in a whole different fashion. And something that doesn't take much time. It's just one of those kind of reframing things, that Barb was talking about in terms of living life. Sometimes it's just reframing our thought process to get us to the next level. So thank you, everybody. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Hi, this is Suzanne Newman, host of the Answers for Elders podcast and radio show. We are the North Star that guides you through the complicated journey of senior care with trusted experts in money, law, living solutions, and more. So join us on this station, your favorite podcast channel, or just go to AnswersForElders.com. Meet the Wayshowers who will help your journey go a lot easier.